I've been in Pompton for close to 60 years at this point. Not quite, but almost. Pompton Lakes was and still is a very small town. It's a very close-knit town. We are a blue-collar town. A lot of people, when I moved here, there was still Dupont as a factory working, and Artistic Weaving was another factory that was working. So a lot of the people in the town worked in town too. The lakes are a very big part of Pompton Lakes. It's actually two river systems that surround the town, and these are, let's say, man-made lakes. They've just been, the rivers widened. There were, I think, 5 lakes that we would use when I was growing up as a teen. It was great because each little neighborhood would go to their own lake. You had swimming and diving, you learned to swim. They had games, badminton, just a tremendous amount of recreation. I can remember walking to the lakes with my girlfriend, her mom, and her friends, and they would have their beach chairs and they would bring picnic baskets, and we would go by about 10 in the morning and stay till about 4 in the afternoon when the moms would pack up to go home and make dinner for the dads. At the end of the summer, it was really fun because there was big competition at the biggest lake of all the different lakes, and it would be swimming competition and diving competitions and synchronized swimming, and it was just a really nice experience growing up here. Opening day of fishing was always big. You'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, don't know why, because the fish would still be there at 11 o'clock in the morning, but it was a big day, opening day of fishing. And yeah, I think people would eat what they caught. They still fish here in Pompton. The water is clean. You can go into it. You can eat the fish that come out of the rivers because they have been cleaned up over the years. There's a river that comes down out of Oakland. So Dupont has been going on as long as Dupont has been, but I guess it didn't really come to the forefront until technology got better and we had a better understanding of pollution, pollutants, and what it was doing to the water, to the ecology, to the river system, the fish, everything around, and then all of a sudden it just went to a war or near that time. And what Dupont was making then, or Lansing, was blasting caps for ammunition. When Dupont bought it, it expanded its operations between Wanacue and Pompton. Eventually, Wanacue closed down and everything was only out of Pompton. It was really force generated by World War I and World War II. You can go back there for ages and never see anything. I think personally one of the reasons that Dupont is not built today, let's say, is that there isn't anybody that wants to put a shovel, let alone a backhoe, in any of that property, because everything was just, okay, dig a hole, put that stuff in it, and we're done. Walked away, and that was the end of it. So who's going to be the first person that's going to say, sure, I'll go back there with a backhoe and start digging stuff up? Mm-hmm. So again, in those days we didn't really know much, even like back definitely in 20s, 30s, 40s. We had no idea what the pollutants were. Only became known, I would say, possibly in the maybe late 60s, definitely the 70s into the 80s. By the 90s, people were well aware of what pollution was doing to water and the environment. And so yes, the Wanacue has a lot of little streams that runs off of it, and groundwater runs into the Wanacue. And there, Pompton Lake sits on a huge underground aquifer, so it would also be possible to get into the aquifer. So, yeah. Oh, the lakes were closed. So that was a shame. There was no more swimming, no more fishing. Signs were all over the place. So it wasn't a question of whether you would like to, you just weren't allowed to. Definitely the end of the summer when all the lakes would get together and have their competitions. And I love synchronized swimming. It's like something that's not done. But these were, I mean, we were teenagers. You would spend your entire summer learning how to put your arm up at the same time as the people next to you so that it would look good. Learning how to do a life-saving dive, that was a biggie. They'd take you out on the dock and teach you how to dive into the water so that your head didn't go under the water and you could keep your eye on whoever it was that was drowning. That was pretty fun too. Live on the river actually, and when all of this was going on with all the testing and everything else, our house being on the river was tested too, and they found no signs of pollution anywhere along where we were on the actual ground, on the land. So I'm sure it does, but I'm not sure that the degree that it does it to is as harmful as some of the other things that we have in our air and our water right now.
Do you think that eventually the lakes will reopen?
I'd like to see them reopen. The water is clean. The water gets tested and there's never any problem or situation with it. As a matter of fact, the aquifer that we sit on, there's an entity, it's called the Municipal Utilities Authority, and that takes care of our water and sewage in town. And they have a convention every year. This is so funny because for a number of years when they would go to the convention, they have like a little contest for the water in towns throughout the state. And for 3 years in a row, Pompton won for the best water in the state. So they asked them to please not enter the contest anymore because they'd like to give somebody else a chance to win for the best water. What did do is they came in and they dredged large parts of the Wanacue in the Dupont property itself. This sounds terrible, but there is a stream, I think even on the map, it's called the Acid Brook, because that's what it was. A lot of the runoff would go into this small area, and it leads to Pompton Lake itself. So they cleaned up the Acid Brook, they built new walls around it, remediated the whole area, carried that down to Pompton Lakes, dredged that for, probably at least a quarter of the lake, put in new soil, put in new plantings, and that's been there for years now, years and years. Everyone was really sad because, I mean, we are Pompton Lakes, so we are a lake community, and that's a large, large part of the community itself. It was definitely a gathering place, and it came at a time also when communities were starting to change. Pompton Lakes is a town with a main street and a couple of other little streets off of it. And into the 70s and 80s, as the malls were starting to be built, Pompton itself started to decline because people were going to the malls instead of the town. So between the lakes being closed and the town on a kind of a slow demise, it was really sad for the whole town.
Spreads the pollution into those houses because of the lake?
We live on the river actually, and when all of this was going on with all the testing and everything else, our house being on the river was tested too, and they found no signs of pollution anywhere along where we were on the actual ground, on the land. So I'm sure it does, but I'm not sure that the degree that it does it to is as harmful as some of the other things that we have in our air and our water right now. I'd like to see them reopen. The water is clean. The water gets tested, and there's never any problem or situation with it. As a matter of fact, the aquifer that we sit on, there's an entity, it's called the Municipal Utilities Authority, and that takes care of our water and sewage in town. And they have a convention every year. This is so funny, because for a number of years when they would go to the convention, they have like a little contest for the water in towns throughout the state. And for 3 years in a row, Pompton won for the best water in the state. So they asked them to please not enter the contest anymore, because they'd like to give somebody else a chance to win.
Oh,
There is the area around Dupont that comes off Cannonball, Colfax, Barber Drive, that area. They call that the plume, and that's where they have like all the mitigation systems. They also, I don't know, you might remember, they used to play on Dupont Field at the end of Barber Drive, soccer. That was a big area. Kids played on that field for years and years and years. So another unfortunate aspect of this is they closed the field down. Thought it was unhealthy for the kids, but they could never show that there was any reason that they thought it was unhealthy.
yeah, no.